Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining our podcast, Moms on the Move. I'm Jen Wills.
And I'm Ashley Steigerwald.
We have a special guest today, April Saville.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for coming. This was actually one of the requests we got from our group members, and they asked us to kind of deep dive into bullying. So I thought that would be a helpful topic. Yep. Obviously, I have 3 young boys, 6, 4, and 14 months. So I haven't dealt with this yet. Have your kids had?
No, I don't think so. 8, 10, and 15. My 10-year-old is totally obsessed with cats, has shown up to the office in a cat outfit, wears cat socks, but very much like a cat. He would not take it if you made fun of him for it. So, no, not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. Well, I was last night kind of like diving a little bit into just statistics because, we're like late 30s and
don't say it like that.
We didn't have the social media growing up that the kids have to deal with now. We talk about like the benefits to social media, but then there's definitely the negative aspects. And I think for children today, it's good, but probably really scary for them. So what are you like, your company is Greater Perspectives LLC.
Yes.
Do people come to you specifically for this, for the bullying?
Usually there's a family dynamic that's going on. So I help with a whole range of problems with individuals, couples, and families there. Okay. But bullying is certainly a large issue today. One thing that's interesting, though, is that with COVID-19, with the virtual students, it's not as common unless it is online, because you're in your virtual classes. It's very hard to get away with the bullying when you're doing a Zoom meeting, right? So, but of course, there's still the kids that attend school, and those are the ones who are still experiencing it. So at the schools, some kids will describe it as like bullying occurs in the blind spots, like in the hallways where they're not seen. So they're still getting away with it at times. But a challenge is that sometimes kids are fearful of speaking up.
Right.
So,
yeah, I kind of use the word a little bit. Bullying and harassment, I think, kind of go hand in hand sometimes, whether it's kids or adults. But the repercussions, the word you just said, I think that it is a thing, and the kids are probably hesitant, as even women in like the workplace, hesitant to speak up.
Absolutely.
But it is super common. It said 1 in 5 kids are bullied, and most of it is girls. Yeah. Do you find that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It goes with any gender. So what's interesting is that kids, from what I've been asking them a lot of questions because I knew this podcast was coming up, and they are fearful of appearing weak for telling on them, but really it's reporting. So if you explain it to a child that this is reporting, it's our duty. Otherwise, you're a bystander.
Instead of a bystander.
Yeah, and so I explain what that is if the kids don't know what that is. So with bullying, it's important to know that it may not be the first time that this is occurring. So it's important to say something to not just any adult, but a trusted adult, because unfortunately not every time is it reported by a certain teacher. So I tell kids, tell a trusted adult about what's going on, and know that most schools, at least the ones that I work in also, they have their own like privacy. So you can tell, and then they notify the teachers, they review the cameras. If it's on the bus, they'll look at that and listen to the audio. So I assure them your privacy, is safe if you report.
Is there repercussions to like cyberbullying? Because
Depends.
Depends. There needs to be.
Yes, I
my
agree.
Gosh. I talked to, I'm not actually naming who it is. I talked to a teenager, and he was telling me what it looks like today. And, it's so prevalent online, but fake accounts.
Yes.
Fake accounts and videos that are being made of, other peers. And I'm like, oh my gosh. We had like AOL.com. We didn't deal with any of this stuff.
Yeah, and they got multiple platforms more than ever. So that's a challenge.
I secretly think he didn't want to tell me the other apps. He's like Instagram, and I was like,
Snapchat.
Lying.
There's all these new ones I'm hearing
crazy
about
one
too.
out there. Yeah.
So there's also a thing about anonymous questions. And so ask a child, like, why would you want to go into anonymous questions because that gives them a disguise. They don't have to reveal who they are, but it still hurts if they say something that's mean. So I also teach kids it's important that anything that you write, type, post is public because it could be front page news. You don't know. So you have to be really mindful of what you post. So I'm not quite sure how the schools are handling that because I don't hear about that happening too much. Usually the parents will report about it. So I would encourage, if you take anything from today, document what occurs. If your child has a cell phone, screenshot it, a tablet, screenshot any kind of bullying, the usernames, block them, but save that because you never know who that is. So document everything. And if it's happening at school, document via email, like, hey, this is what's going on with my child, and this is, the solution that we came up with today in the meeting. So that way there's a paper trail just in case. So
this was kind of the question that we got.
Yep.
Oh, really?
It was, her child is being bullied. What is the appropriate action the parent should take? What is too involved? Or
you want your children to be resilient.
Yeah.
And know how to handle situations, but at the same time, you don't want it to affect their mental health. So what's that fine line? Yeah.
Well, it's important to report it. So, empower your child that this is a reporting. Explain the difference. It's not tattletaling, it's reporting. Tell a trusted adult. So that could be a teacher that they trust. A parent could go in this themselves if the child is too afraid to do that. So I'm sure that privacy applies also to the parent. So that way they're aware of the situation. Like I said, it happens in blind spots. So teachers may not know what's occurring at that point. So sometimes parents have to be the voice for their child.
Yeah. But you talked about bystander. And I think for me personally, I do a lot of work in Scouts, and one of the things that we really push and that I push with my boys is this idea of being an upstander. That when you see something, you need to say something because it is hard for the victim, the person being bullied, the person in that uncomfortable situation to step up sometimes. And it is not always their responsibility to do so. It is the upstander. So when my oldest was in, I think it was 5th grade, there was a girl who had been homeschooled. It was her first year in public school. In 5th grade, you're starting to get that girl dynamic. And so the mom, I was at a class party, and the mom came up to me and she's like, I have to let you know that Tripp helped my daughter. He was checking in on her. He was introducing her to the other girls. He was trying to calm the girl drama on there. And she was like, I cannot tell you. She came home crying every day until she made friends with him. And I was just like, oh. But it was like, we push that upstander. Like, you have to be the upstander.
I love that.
And if you create that culture of upstander, it helps people from, I don't know. I think it's a culture shift. And
all right, where's the trophy?
I know.
Parent award tonight.
No, but it's so important. You have to, see something, you say something.
Yes.
You have to stand up. Yeah.
Another important thing,
I love that.
when we talk about bullying,
I'm so proud.
I explained it to kids about there's 2 types of bullies. There's the main bully, and then there's kind of like the follower-up bully, I call them. One thing about the main bully, in my experience so far, I noticed that they tend to be bullied at home.
Yeah.
And if not that, maybe they didn't have the proper teachings about what right from wrong, how to treat people. So one thing I've asked children is, have you ever met a happy person who puts other people down? Surprisingly, every child has answered correctly. No, they have never seen that. So you have to keep in mind, even though it appears that they're happy, they're really miserable inside. And what does misery love? Company.
Yeah.
So it makes sense when I explain it to kids that way. So I encourage parents to have that kind of conversation with their kids.
Yeah.
The followers, they are like bystanders, but at the same time, they don't want to be on the bad side of the bully. But
it's kind of like turns into like that pack mentality.
Yes.
Well, and especially with older teens and social media now, you've got Instagram and you've got Snapchat, everything else. I find it is very easy with that shield of the internet and anonymity to dehumanize others.
Yeah.
And I think when you that bully mentality, you get into that. Especially when we're talking about our LGBTQ plus IA community and others, it's easy to stick a label and say you are gay. And now, therefore, you are less human, or I've dehumanized you because I've used a word to label you. And then it's easier to get others to target those because they remove their humanity. And that is one of the things that you try to have, I've got a 15-year-old, so you can kind of have these discussions now. But, when we talk about just even, when we get into politics and bullying, it gets into that when we start dehumanizing is when it becomes easier to do that. And I think it's always
so much easier to dehumanize too on the internet.
Yes.
Yep, because you're not having to look at a human.
No, true.
You remove that humanity out of people, and they were all humans. We're all people.
Yeah, but there's like a strength behind the screen that you don't have in person.
Yes, I've been hearing a lot about that, where it's like they don't say anything to my face. They will say it online though, or they'll be indirect with it, and all these likes. But keep in mind that what you see on social media is not necessarily real. So it's a great way to pretend that your life is fantastic, perfect. So, but that's not reality.
Right. Yeah. It is a lot of pressure, though, for the kids.
And the kids have to know this, too. If you feel that it is a trigger by being on social media, sometimes it's best to be without. So,
and we monitor. I mean,
how do you do that?
So Tripp didn't get Instagram until this year. He's in 9th grade. And so the summer before 9th grade, I was like, you can get Instagram, but here's the deal. I'm going to put it, I'm very much about transparency. I have an app on your phone. I can see what you type. I can see who you message. I can see contacts add. Safer Kids is the one that I have, but there's a whole bunch of them out there. And we've got a policy that if for some reason, and I haven't had to do it, but if for some reason I'm concerned about messages going back and forth, I get to look. So, I mean, there's no invasion of privacy because I've set the expectation that you have no privacy.
Right. Yes.
But parents need to monitor what their kids are doing.
I
you
agree.
have to.
Yeah.
Their frontal cord, it's just not all formulated, and they make bad decisions, and that's okay. They're supposed to.
Yeah.
But it's about helping them through that.
Absolutely.
I think too, like I'll never forget, I think it was a middle school teacher. He was awesome. He was, like, in hindsight, probably one of my favorite teachers, but he said, get ready for the worst years of your life. But it was funny because I always remember thinking, like, you are in that middle school. Apparently this was where all the cyberbullying is taking place. It's most prevalent in the middle school years, followed by high school, obviously. But you're so awkward. I mean, everyone.
I'm so glad we didn't have social media when we were in middle school.
Oh, God. You're so ugly. Not you, everyone. Everyone's ugly. You're awkward. You're, like, just, you're not
happening younger and younger.
Yeah.
So fifth graders.
Yes.
Yep,
but I think, like, setting the
expectation
expectation for the kids, like, would you suggest doing that? Like, these are about to be really hard years.
So just getting into social media?
No, like, just setting the expectation to your children that the next few years are going to be hard. Just so it's not like, oh, this is great, everything's going to be great, and they get more down on themselves.
Yes, I do. I'm a realist, so that's just kind of my approach. So I encourage parents to really encourage open communication with your kids. That is so big. And also model for them, confidence and, that we're not perfect and it's okay. So a lot of this can start from home, like, talking with confidence and also acknowledging mistakes. So model for your kids what you want to see them do, because they look to you on what to do in life. So that's one big key in that.
Really still like what you said.
Yes. Yeah.
Like having a voice for people who don't. Because, you see in your own kids, some, like I already see in my oldest, he has a very strong personality. And I'm not sure my middle one is going to have that, but I hope that, I've already told him, I hope that you always stick up for your brother.
Yeah.
Growing up, I mean, I don't think she'll be offended, but my sister had less, like, she was a lot sweeter than me. It's just a fact. But I've always had more of that strong personality. And, she called me multiple times when kids locked her in the bathroom. And, I came and stepped in. And, I remember, like, I've already told my 6-year-old the story of that. And I said, it's just so important to be there for each other. So, that's something I'm at this age trying to work on, but
absolutely,
obviously I haven't navigated teenagers yet, and I'm. You keep saying it's not bad.
It's different. It's just different. And you move from that don't touch this, don't eat that. Why are you putting that in your mouth? Like,
don't paint the wall.
Yeah, you move from that to like more coaching, and it's really hard sometimes because you just want to be like, you need to do this, and instead I'm like, well, can you talk to me about why you made that decision? Could you have made a different decision, knowing you got to talk them into their decisions?
Yes, age is a big factor.
It's a huge factor.
When it comes to teens, they would much rather be listened to more times than not. Like, oh, do you want to talk about it? Yeah. Give them the floor. I've never heard a child say, can I give you some advice? They never said no.
Right.
So always, open up the door for conversation. And most times they just want to be heard. And they may even seek your advice from that point. Yeah. So open dialogue, most important thing you can do for sure. And just empower them to use your voice, I think it's important that with the bullying stuff that if you don't know what to say, a child, don't say anything at all, because the most important thing that a bully wants from the bullying is to see a response.
Okay.
So one thing I like to teach is assertive communication. For example, if a child used an example of, they said, that, oh, you're weird. And I said, how'd you handle it? They didn't say anything. It's like, okay, well, you could maybe say, I'm sorry, did you say something? And then they go, yeah, you're weird. And then you can just go, okay. And then just keep going, nonchalant about it. And then that might make the bully go, oh.
Yeah.
So, but if they don't know what to say, when in doubt, just say nothing, no response. Then when you can get to a trusted adult, that's what I would suggest.
Okay. And I heard with girls, it's a lot more of the rumors. And boys, it's more of like the physical bullying. Have you seen a lot of like girls like come to you for that reason?
Yeah, it's still about the same as it probably was when we were in school. Yeah. So, girls tend to be more talk, but the boys do it too.
Yeah.
For sure. They just kind of try to sound a little bit macho with it.
Right.
But rumors are hard.
Yeah.
But, just say, hey, did you say this about me? And then you can go, oh, okay, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just, the less reaction you get, but being assertive is even better, because then you're kind of showing like, okay, well, that doesn't affect me, which, defeats the whole purpose of bullying. So,
right.
But I think it starts earlier with the girls, because I remember when my son was in elementary school, I think it was 4th or 5th grade, they ended up asking the girls to go and do kind of like a separate meeting, and the principal got in, and because some of the parents had called and complained, and he's an amazing principal, he was like, we're shutting this down now. He got the girls together and did a whole presentation about upstander and supporting one another, and awesome. Really nipped it in the bud as soon as he heard there was some stuff going on. But you hope schools are always that responsive.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it's also, with these kids, they have to understand the serious repercussions. You hear about the kids committing suicide and blaming it on bullies. I mean, there are legal repercussions for bullying as well. I mean, this is not a joke anymore. And I do think our culture is starting to really realize how prevalent, and especially with social media, destructive it can be.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, even this dark side of it too is like Columbine and the school shootings, and you see the kids that have been bullied, and obviously there's a lot more
mental
going on,
stuff.
For real mental health stuff. But I think like teaching your kids, you just never know what could happen.
Yes.
You don't know what somebody's going through.
You would be very
and you don't
surprised.
know what people are capable of.
Like, you don't, being on the side of seeing how schools operate, it's different. You be surprised how many kids might have aggression towards others or selves. There's a lot of them,
Right.
That's why I have a job and have a business.
Yeah.
So it's just so prevalent.
Right.
But the thing that all kids have in common is that they aren't able to see big picture. Yeah. So it really heavily relies more so on the parents or guardians more than anyone, because they have the biggest impact on how they interact with the world. So,
yeah.
It is so true. Like it's so dramatic when you're in that time.
Yes.
And it feels
like it's
it feels
everything.
so big, and then you get out of it and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I could go back to the old me, and and it's just kind of this like blip in time, but it can affect the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
What would you say are like warning signs for parents?
Yeah. A bullying?
Yeah.
Maybe
their child is a bully or being bullied.
Yeah.
Both.
Well, keep in mind that if a child is a bully, there's a good chance that the parents are either not involved or they're condoning some form of bullying in the home. Now, if a child is being bullied, they may act like everything's fine. They may isolate.
Okay.
They may, it's really hard sometimes. It just depends on the child. That's why the best thing you could do is just keep a really open dialogue. Because if you do that, they're more likely to come to you with that problem.
Right.
And if you're concerned, check with maybe a coach or a counselor to see about, maybe they might open up with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you talked about trusted adults. So I've heard cases where, it may be in the case of like a neurodivergent student who maybe feels bullied by their teacher. So when we talk trusted adult, I think that's a really important concept to talk to kids about, because you're supposed to be able to trust your teacher or trust your parents.
Yes.
But if they're the ones doing the bullying, helping that kid, you hope they find someone they can talk to.
Yeah. So that's
School
why
counselors.
Yes, whoever it is that child trusts. So if you just throw that keyword in there, trusted adult, in front of it, that will make a difference, because then they know, okay, well, I can't just tell any adult. I got to tell one that I feel comfortable going to that will take it serious. Because sometimes, unfortunately, it isn't reported. And so sometimes I've had to step in and say, hey, this is going on. So that my go-to is usually the principal or the guidance counselor, because sometimes they help get the group together to work through an issue. The principal can go and look and see, did this happen? Is this truthful? Things like that. Put the teachers on alert. So that's how it typically goes.
So is it parents that typically reach out to you? Do you work for schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my full-time job. I work in Spartanburg District 5 schools, and there I typically will hear from the kids first.
Okay.
So sometimes when I first start working with a kid in counseling, that might be part of the reason for referral, that they're experiencing bullying, depression, etc. So usually I hear from the kids first.
That's great, actually.
Yeah. So I really encourage, like, if you think your child might need someone to talk to, we don't always go to our parents every time we're struggling, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to hear, well, toughen up. We don't, so sometimes
And you don't always want your parents to step in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
they don't want to be embarrassed, things like that.
Right.
So, so if when in doubt, maybe see a coach or a therapist to give them that open space if you have any concerns. But always empower your child, like, I'm here.
Yeah.
No judgments. I just want to be here for you.
Right.
So
what do you do in your private practice?
A whole range of things. So I sometimes work with individuals on personal, professional growth. I work with couples that parted ways, and families, because sometimes if parents aren't on the same page, that causes a lot of stress on the child. Kids really need consistency. So I help parents to get on the same page, to compromise. That's the key word. Compromise on how you want to set the structure for your home. If you live separately, you co-parent, making sure that they are in line with the same house rules and consequences, keeps it consistent, and that really helps
So you
kids.
don't have one fun house and one strict house?
Yes, because that is,
it's
a challenge if they don't have that. So that's something I help with there.
Yeah. So what ages do you typically hear from the most that are approaching you?
So it depends on their age. If it's children, they're less verbal when they're, about 8 and younger.
Okay.
They have a harder time expressing themselves, but by 8 and up, they seem to be able to vocalize a bit more.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's, I would say that's kind of like
so 8
the age cutoff there, yeah.
And then like when they hit middle school is when you're really seeing.
No, 5th grade.
Fifth grade,
you'll see that. They're already on, some of them are already on social media. Most of them have cell phones.
Oh,
Shocking.
I
didn't have one until I was 16.
I was shocked how many kids in
Wow.
elementary school had social media accounts.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And sometimes parents don't know it either. And, I know this about bullying, but it's a whole nother realm using these apps, because there are, predators on these apps too.
Yeah.
I don't know how they find time in their day to be looking at what kids go on to, but I'm just saying that's another thing to look out for. So I do agree, monitoring is so key, because we don't know.
Yeah.
So
when did you give your kids a phone?
All my kids have phones. That's because they go to grandparents and stuff like that. But their phones are Matthew's phone is locked down. He can't add contacts. So it's me, Bill, the grandparents, and games. But he has to get approval to download any game.
Okay.
And then John's got the same setup. And then Trip, my oldest, my 15-year-old, he has to get approval to download apps. He can't just download what he wants. It sends me a message and it says, do you approve or deny the app? And then I can approve or deny it. And then with the Safer Kids, his phone shuts off at 9 o'clock at night and doesn't turn on again until 8 o'clock in the morning. So he can't be sitting there at 1 o'clock in the morning sending text messages.
That's great, because that's sometimes a boundary that kids have a struggle with.
So we take away the temptation. We take away the temptation. So
great.
I've got their phones like
very anti-phones.
Yeah. And another great thing is, I love that, by the way, because, you know, especially if a kid is already struggling, you want to be possibly the last interaction they have before they go to bed.
Yeah, that's very true.
So sometimes I encourage families to have like a daily check-in, just 15 minutes, because not all families sit down and eat together these days. I encourage it, but it's just not always the case because of work schedules, you name it. But a 15-minute check-in, how was your day? And the child could just say, well, you know, it went well. And hey, do you want to talk about it? You just open the floor. So I do think that's a really good way to keep the family bond. You know, time is something you can't ever get back. So that's another benefit of trying that.
After we pick them up, I'm like, everybody's going to put their electronics down. We're all going to talk, or I'm going to sing 80s music very loud.
I love it.
My kids,
And they're all like,
they're so open with me, but again, they're so little. It's like, I know they're gonna, you know, they tell me every little thing. Then it'll be like, so-and-so tried to kiss me today, and I told her, you get away. There's the coronavirus. I was like, good job, buddy. Don't let her kiss you.
That's so great, though. It's just they start, you know, when teenage years, they start to try to find themselves. So it's such a hard time, because that is, like we were talking about, their world at that moment. It's hard to see future, you know, and keep this in mind that most bullies, from what I've seen, they change when they get older, because they realize, okay, well, I can't really maintain a job because I'm bullying the staff, so I lost my job. But some will stay the same, but I've seen that the ones that I knew in school, they're single and, you know, just probably pretty miserable. So I explain that to kids. Do you think that they'll be able to maintain a job acting like that? No. You know? So big picture, but they don't think about that unless you break it down to them.
So you do a lot of like big picture.
Yes, thinking ahead, but explain it in a way that matters to them. Because, you know, I explore, like, what do you want to do with your life, you know? So I go with their interests and then just break it down to them and teach them, you know, to identify values. That's a big thing. Because if we don't have values, how do we set standards for relationships about how people treat us? You know, it can be very confusing. Like, sometimes with bullies, they'll make jokes like, oh, I was just kidding. And then they're not quite sure, are they being mean? Or are they just joking? Am I being sensitive? You know? So
that's gaslighting. Getting gaslighted.
So it's a tough time, but with a lot of open communication, it can help them a lot.
So again, just to reiterate, if like for the mom who requested this and her child is being bullied, your advice is to go to a trusted adult at the school.
Yes.
Okay.
If that's where it's occurring.
Report it.
Yes. Report it.
Okay.
And
you said acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean,
and they're welcome to reach out to me if they have any further questions. But report it to a trusted adult. Have an open conversation with your child about it and how they're feeling about it. You know, letting them know that that's never personal, and let that child know that that person that's doing the bullying is probably bullied themselves, most likely. So if anything, try to change your thinking that I feel bad for this person. They're so miserable that they're putting other people down.
Right.
So
what you said, it's not personal. I think that's for the bullied child really important to understand, because they take it personal. There's something wrong with me. I am less than. I am not good enough. And really, it's not about the bullied child. It's the bully. That's really important.
Absolutely. And the ones that are following, they're about equal. You know, they're scared of the bully themselves. I mean, how sad is it to not think for yourself?
Yeah.
Be an upstander.
Yes.
Be an
love
upstander.
That. I'm going to use that.
Yes,
I love
there
that.
you go.
Yes. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming.
If people can find you, how do they find you?
Well, we're going to post a link in the description of this post.
Okay,
great. Perspectives LLC is my coaching business. And any questions, feel free to reach out. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, and real quick, we wanted to thank Prime Lending and Wilson Associates. We have some awesome sponsors, and we are seriously very, very grateful for their support and encouragement.
Yeah, the team over at Prime Lending is phenomenal. We're doing a refi right now with them. And like we got the other day I just got my email. It was like loan approval. And I think I wrote back, dang, that was fast. So they've been great. And then Wilson Associates Real Estate, and just very good real estate in Greenville. Highest average price per home in the Greenville MLS. It's over $460,000. They know how to get it done.
They do. Ooh. They do. Yep. So thank you. Thanks. And thank you, April, for coming. That was very helpful. And hopefully everybody got something out of that. And again, if you have any other questions, we're going to post her information. And anyway, we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.